From oil and geopolitics, we turn our attention to something much closer home, to our plates, in fact. And in fact, what we consume is top of mind, because now there is so much of that health push that is happening. In the light of which, The Whole Truth, which is a brand, was putting out no sugar as part of their products that they were putting out. And that was put to scrutiny by the FSSAI. And this on the complaint placed by a rival brand. After which, The Whole Truth has decided that they are going to change the no sugar claim and make it a claim which is only about the ingredient that they use. They say sweetened with dates. So there is that shift that has happened, but does it tell a larger story? The bigger debate is, with all the health halo that is being put on so many products out there that we consume, are we really compromising on the ingredient list without getting that much more clearer about what is actually being used and what is being put as a marketing campaign? It's an important question to ask on The Big Question, and we're taking it across to our panelists. They are joining us on the show. Lloyd Matthias is with us this evening. Business executive, entrepreneur. Good to have you with us as always. Urvashi Agarwal is also with us. She's a nutritionist besides being a fitness coach. Good to have you both. Urvashi, let me start with you. The basics. If a product is using dates, honey or jaggery, is it truly no added sugar from a nutritional standpoint?
Thank you so much, Vikram, for the question. No, it is not. Nutritionally, it is not. And as per FSSAI packaging rules, which clearly state that any form of sugar, whether it is sucrose, glucose, molasses, honey, sweetened jams, or sweetened fruit juices, if the food is sweetened, then they cannot say no added sugar on the front of the packaging or in the nutrition label. So no, it's absolutely wrong.
So then,
and yeah.
So for the average consumer then, Urvashi, trying to be healthy, does the body process these so-called natural sugars very differently from regular sugar, you'd say?
Okay, so very, very, very good question that you've asked, Vikram. So, but, there is a lack of awareness, and nowadays there is a new tide which has started that bash refined sugar and the other forms of added sugar, let's say unrefined sugar, jaggery, honey, your desi khand, coconut sugar, these are better. But let me tell you, they all have almost same kind of calories, and metabolically they have similar effect in the body. All the added sugar should be had in moderation. So as per American Heart Association, men can have 36 grams of added sugar or 9 teaspoons every day. Women and children that is 2 years and above, can have 26 grams of sugar or 6 teaspoons every day. And this is not for refined sugar. This is for any form of added sugar.
Lloyd, what do you say to this entire trend? Why do you think brands are leaning so heavily on terms like no added sugar, guilt-free, clean? Is this smart marketing according to you, or is it crossing into misleading territory?
Hey, thanks for having me on the show, Vikram. Clearly, this is not smart marketing. I think this is absolutely misleading consumers, and certainly not desirable, and certainly not welcome by any standards. I think Indian fruit brands are not selling health. They're actually selling a health halo. I think Urvashi pointed to that. It's really a psychological trick that uses wellness terms, terms like clean, natural, guilt-free, and such like. I think a lot of this is really a health halo when you're trying to actually kind of confuse consumers into consuming not so healthy stuff. And I think sensible brands ought not to do it. I think where they try to, they should be clearly penalized. And I think there's a lot of misuse of the fact of these kind of terms. The fact that we are penalizing some of these brands after public outrage really proves that to some extent our system is broken. Just to get example, you walk into any supermarket, you'll see a whole lot of brands have things like guilt-free, clean and natural,
yes,
high protein, multi-grain. And the moment you go a little deeper into the ingredient list, you realize that a lot of this is just a smoke screen, right? Because people tend to pick up things at 2 or 3 seconds and just put them into their shopping bag. And I think a lot of this stuff has to be called out. especially given the fact that India is the diabetes capital of the world, the fact that obesity is a growing epidemic, specifically among the upper income segments. I think there's a bit of a serious bit of an issue here. And I think FSSAI ought to proactively look at some of these things.
And not wait for complaints.
Not be a reaction that, a lot of them are reactive.
Right, not be reactive. Lloyd, but the whole truth case, clearly triggering scrutiny in this case. Do you think startup wellness brands are getting a little more transparent, or maybe just better at storytelling than the legacy FMCG companies? Is there a difference you're seeing there?
I wouldn't really put a differentiator between legacy FMCG and startups. I do concede that a lot of legacy FMCG brands, because many of them are global, possibly sign up to a higher standard of ethics, at least notionally. But I must concede that some startups are being far more transparent as well. So there's no difference between startups and legacy brands. However, I do believe that all companies in India, food companies in India, indulge in a bit of subterfuge. And I say this because across the board, if you walk into any supermarket, I think a lot of brands today are playing up. They recognize that post the pandemic, and even, let's say, over the last decade or so, consumers are far more health conscious. And people are seeing adding a modicum of health and things like sugar-free as a positive attribute to boost their product sales. And I think indulging on that without proper research, I think, is taking the consumer for granted and actually fooling the consumer. And that is the big concern.
That is the concern.
All across the spectrum, companies are liable and companies are responsible.
So, Urvashi, from that health perspective, should there be clearer front-of-pack labeling that tells consumers the total sugar content rather than just added sugar or no added sugar?
Absolutely, that's the need of the hour. I mean, forget about being transparent. In India, the regulations are so weak, and the companies openly not only flout the rules, they actually make claims on the front of the packaging which are misleading. I mean, let's take an example of fruit juices. We all know by now that these packaged fruit juices are nothing but water, added sugar, artificial colors, and a lot of preservatives and stabilizers. So I think it's in need of the hour that all the companies follow the regulations and they make they give right information on the front of the packaging. That's really, really important. But nowadays, it's getting worse to worse. I mean, recently I made a video on chips packet where they had in the ingredients, they had mentioned vegetable oil. And then at the bottom, if you go a little lower, they mention two symbols. This symbol, then go to the batch number, match the symbol to the batch number. If this is a symbol, let's say symbol A, that means this has rice bran oil. And if you find second symbol with the batch number, it has palm oil. I mean, that's the kind of hide and seek the companies have started playing.
So transparency is missing.
Several, food products where they're writing no refined sugar on the front, and they're adding jaggery, unrefined sugar,
so is
honey,
it not possible,
Urvashi,
is it not possible for consumers to understand what they're about to consume? Should they look at something specific on a label to actually make a healthier choice? Or is that option not open for most of them?
Absolutely. Look, as per the FSSAI packaging rules, every food product should have all the details of the ingredients in the ingredient list. So that every consumer, I always say, flip the packet and read the ingredients. The less number of ingredients in a food product, the better it is. I mean, better than others. And definitely check the nutrition label. These two things will definitely give every consumer a clearer picture.
And what about the regulators, Lloyd? Because marketing is always going to try and push the boundaries. But when does it become this problem that you yourself highlighted, this health halo problem?
Vikram, I would say regulators must mandate that if a grain or a nutrient is advertised in the front, like if you call it an almond or a ragi cookie, the exact percentage must be printed in the same font size right next to the claim on the front of the pack. Right? That's being honest, to my mind. That's being true to a product, and that's being true to your code of conduct. That will prevent a 1% ingredient from hijacking the whole package. Right? And today what's happening is if an ingredient contributes to the total glycemic load and a free sugar content, it cannot claim to be a no sugar product. So I think there is a lot of attempts by businesses across the spectrum to kind of put a smoke screen and lead consumers down the garden path of all is good and kosher. but clearly the intentions are not good. And this needs to be called out proactively by regulators. I like the fact that what Urvashi said, people are pointing to it, people are becoming more aware. But the reality is 90% of consumers don't have the time and they just go for some of these labels. When you're doing a brisk shopping after a hard day's work, people don't look into the fine print. And I think that's being exploited by companies, which is completely not okay, specifically where India is today in terms of the health of the average Indian.
Well, what's becoming very clear is this, that when it comes to food labels, perception is fast overtaking reality, because the no added sugar, it may sound very reassuring actually to many consumers, but if consumers do not fully understand what is actually inside, what that claim is and what is actually inside, then the label is risking becoming more about marketing than actual meaningful information. It beats the purpose of putting that label there in the first place. So the challenge now is to strike the right balance, give the brands the freedom to innovate and communicate, but also ensure that consumers are not misled by a health halo that is not entirely accurate. Thank you, Urvashi Agarwal and Lloyd Matthias. Thank you for joining us, sharing your perspectives on this. It's an important debate. So yes, whether it is oil that India buys and where it buys from and the diversification that happens and the costs that are to be paid, both strategically and actual costs, choices do matter. How do you make your choices? Even when it comes to the food that we buy and consume, it is going to become a matter of going beyond the label, of examining what is actually out there and being a little more circumspect when it comes to those choices that we make. It's going to be top of our radar when we are delving into these consumer issues on The Big Question. I'm Vikram Oza from me and the team. Thank you so much for joining us. Good evening.